They got one thing wrong about you. They thought you were weak. They thought the silence meant fear. They thought the patience meant you had no teeth. They thought because you kept giving chances, you did not know how to leave. Because you stayed calm, you did not know how to become dangerous. Because you forgave, you could not become cold. Because you loved deeply, you would tolerate anything. They were wrong. You were never weak. You were holding something back. Something you knew was there long before anybody else noticed. A part of you that did not need approval. A part of you that could walk away and never look back. A part of you that could stop explaining. Stop chasing. Stop forgiving on command. Stop shrinking. A part of you that had teeth. You kept it behind the door because you still believed being a good man meant never letting it out. That was the mistake. Not your kindness. Not your patience. The mistake was believing strength had to remain harmless to be good. So you kept choosing the softer response. Again, again, again. Someone crossed the line. You breathed. Someone lied. You listened. Someone insulted you and hid it inside a joke. You smiled because starting a war over every little thing felt beneath you. Someone broke a promise. You found context. Someone disappeared when you needed them. You found excuses. Someone took your loyalty and treated it like furniture. Always there. Always available. Always waiting. And you let it happen longer than you should have. Not because you could not stop it. Because you kept trying to protect something inside yourself. You did not want to become bitter. You did not want to become cruel. You did not want one ugly season to rewrite your entire character. So you held the monster back. That is what nobody saw. They only saw the man saying, "It's fine." They did not hear what came after. The argument in your own head. The part of you saying enough. The part of you saying stop giving this person another piece. The part of you saying you know exactly what this is. The part of you saying walk. And then the other voice. Be patient. Be better. Maybe they are hurting. 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 Maybe love means endurance. That second voice won for years. You became a professional at defeating your own instincts. You could sense disrespect before it finished entering the room, and still convince yourself to sit down beside it. You could hear manipulation in the first sentence, and still give the person an hour to explain. You could feel when somebody's energy changed, and still make yourself believe you were imagining it. You were loyal to everybody, except the part of you that knew. That part became angry. Not at them, at you. That is a different kind of anger. It does not scream. It asks one question. How many times are you going to betray yourself just to prove you are not like them? That question changes a man. Because eventually you realize restraint and self-abandonment are not the same thing. Patience and permission are not the same thing. Forgiveness and access are not the same thing. Kindness and weakness are not the same thing. You had mixed them together. Other people had too, and they benefited from the confusion. A man with no boundaries is easy to call kind. He makes life comfortable. He accepts the apology, answers the phone, takes the extra work, lends the money, covers the mistake, keeps the secret, takes the blame, stays after respect disappears, and everybody says he has a good heart. Maybe. Or maybe he has not yet learned that a good heart needs a gate. You learned, slowly, painfully. You learned the first time your forgiveness became somebody else's permission. You learned the first time a person apologized and repeated the same behavior 3 days later. You learned when somebody said, "You know I care about you," while acting like care was something that only needed to exist in sentences. You learned when people got comfortable with your silence. That one hurt, because you thought silence showed discipline. They read it as inability. You thought walking away from pointless arguments showed strength. They thought you had no argument. You thought not embarrassing people publicly showed class. They thought you would protect them forever. They did not know you were keeping a ledger, not a revenge ledger, a clarity ledger. You remembered. Every time the story changed. Every time your name was used when you were not in the room. Every time somebody needed you and suddenly became warm again. Every time they vanished after the emergency was solved. Every time your kindness was treated like a renewable resource, you remembered. Quiet men remember a lot. That is what makes the change so confusing to everybody else. They think the final decision came from nowhere. It did not. They saw the last drop. They did not see the glass filling for years. One day you say no, and they act shocked. One day you stop answering, and they call you cold. And one day you leave, and suddenly you are the problem. That is when you understand something ugly. Some people only respect the old version of you because the old version was profitable. Your lack of boundaries made their life easier. Your patience allowed them to stay unchanged. Your fear of losing them removed the cost of hurting you. Of course they preferred him, but you are not required to remain wounded just because your healing inconveniences somebody. That is where the monster starts moving. Not outside, inside. You stop silencing your own judgment. You stop needing 5 pieces of proof after the first 3 already told the story. You stop waiting for the final insult, the final lie, the final betrayal. You start respecting direction. That is a dangerous skill. The old you waited until the building was fully on fire before leaving. The new you smells smoke. You do not need to see flames. You trust yourself now. That is what the monster really is. Self-trust without apology. A man who trusts himself becomes difficult to trap. Not because he knows everything, because he knows he will act when he learns enough. He does not stay in terrible places waiting for certainty. He does not let fear become a prison guard. He does not need everybody around him to agree before he moves. That is different from the old you. The old you needed consensus. You wanted people to understand why you were leaving, why you were changing, why you were saying no, why you were stopped trying. You wanted a clean exit with no villain. Life rarely gives that. Sometimes the price of choosing yourself is being misunderstood. You know that now. And once misunderstanding stops frightening you, manipulation loses one of its favorite tools. You are selfish. Fine. You changed. Correct. You think you are better than everybody. No. You just stopped volunteering to be treated worse. You used to be so nice. You still are. Niceness just lost authority over self-respect. There is a difference. That is what they feel when they say the monster is coming out. They are not watching you become evil. They are watching the version of you they could control lose jurisdiction. You do not respond the same way anymore. That scares people who memorized your reactions. They knew the old sequence. Pull away. You chase. Get quiet. You overthink. Threaten to leave. You panic. Give you a little affection. You soften. Make you feel guilty. You apologize. Old system. Reliable. Then one day they press the button. Nothing. They press another. Nothing. They try history. Nothing. They try pity. You care. Still no. They try anger. You listen. Still no. That is the monster they never understood. Not rage. Not violence. Finality. A man who can care and still say no. A man who can love and still leave. A man who can remember the good and still refuse to repeat the bad. A man who does not need hatred to create distance. That man is hard to manipulate because he no longer needs the other person to become a villain. This is important. You do not need to prove they are terrible. You only need to know the situation is terrible for you. You do not need a courtroom. You do not need witnesses. You do not need the internet to vote. You do not need one final conversation where everybody agrees. You know what you lived. That is enough. The monster trusts the evidence, and evidence has been speaking for a long time. You were too busy translating it into hope. Hope can be beautiful. Hope can also become a drug. Just one more week, one more chance, one more promise, one more reset. You kept taking small doses of potential while reality was killing the relationship in front of you. Then something changed. You became less interested in what people could become, more interested in what they repeatedly are. That is maturity, and maturity looks cold to anyone surviving on possibility. You stopped falling in love with the apology, started watching the behavior after it, stopped falling in love with words, started watching what somebody does when nobody is afraid of losing you, stopped being impressed by intensity, started respecting consistency. Those changes are not dramatic, but they completely change who gets access to you. Your circle gets smaller. Your mind gets quieter. Your time comes back. You start realizing how much energy was being spent managing chaos. And when chaos leaves, you feel strange. At first, peace can feel empty. You are used to stimulation, used to solving, used to somebody needing something, used to emotional fires. Then one evening nothing is wrong. Nobody is angry. No message is waiting to ruin your night. No argument is replaying. No person is making you guess where you stand. And you do not know what to do with the quiet. That is when you realize how long you lived in survival mode. Peace should not feel suspicious, but it does at first. Stay there. Do not create a problem just because your body misses the familiar rhythm of fixing one. That is another monster you have to hold back now. The addiction to chaos. Not everybody you call exciting is good for you. Not everything that makes your heart race is love. Sometimes your nervous system is recognizing danger, and you renamed it chemistry. You know better now. You stop chasing intensity. You start respecting peace. That makes your choices look boring to people who are still addicted to drama. Good. Boring can build. Chaos can only consume. You are beginning to understand that power is not how much damage you can cause. Power is how little damage can control you. That is the line. Anybody can become destructive after pain. That is not impressive. Pain is good at making destruction. The real challenge is becoming structured. You are doing that. You train when nobody insulted you that day. You work when you are not angry. You build when there is nobody to prove wrong. You keep the promise when revenge is no longer providing fuel. That is where the monster becomes disciplined. And a disciplined monster is not a monster anymore. It is force. Directed force. Contained force. A blade in a sheath does not stop being sharp. It simply knows when it is not needed. That is you. For years, people mistook the sheath for dullness. They thought because you chose peace, you had no capacity for confrontation. Wrong. You chose peace because you understood the cost of unnecessary war. That is not weakness. That is control. You knew what anger could do. You knew the words you could say. You knew where people were vulnerable. You knew how easy it would be to become cruel after being treated cruelly. And you refused. That refusal took strength nobody applauded. Do not forget that. There were moments when being petty would have been easier. You chose dignity. Moments when exposing somebody would have felt satisfying. You stayed quiet. Moments when revenge was available. You walked. You were not weak. You were protecting your character from temporary emotions. That is rare. But there is a danger in protecting character too aggressively. You can become so afraid of being cruel that you tolerate cruelty. You did. You can become so obsessed with being mature that you stop defending yourself. You did. You can become so committed to peace that you call surrender peace. You did. That is what is changing. You are learning that goodness can stand up. Kindness can say no. Love can close the door. Compassion can refuse the request. Patience can end. You do not have to become bad to become difficult. You just have to stop being easy to disrespect. That is all. And the moment you stop being easy, certain people will call the monster out of you. Let them. Maybe the monster is just the part of you that understands consequences. Maybe the monster is the part that says enough once and does not need to say it twice. Maybe it is the part that refuses to keep auditioning for love. Maybe it is the part that stops explaining a boundary to somebody committed to crossing it. Maybe it is the part that can sit alone without reopening the wrong door. That is not evil. That is adulthood after illusion. And illusion is dying quickly now. You see who calls when they need something. Who disappears when you need something. Who supports you when you are struggling. Who supports you when you are winning. That second one matters more than people think. Some people can tolerate your pain because it makes them feel secure. Your growth makes them strange. Pay attention. Who gets quiet when something good happens to you? Who changes the subject? Who finds a small flaw in every victory? Who loved giving you advice but becomes uncomfortable when you stop needing it? You see more now. Do not become paranoid. That is not strength. Just become observant. Let people reveal themselves without forcing the reveal. The monster does not need to hunt enemies. It needs to stop ignoring evidence. That keeps you sane. You do not have to assume everybody is against you. You only stop assuming everybody is for you. Neutral ground. Let actions decide. That is peaceful. And peace is starting to fit you. Your face is changing. Not physically. The tension. You no longer carry every room on your shoulders. You stop trying to manage how everybody feels about you. That burden was enormous. People are allowed to dislike you. People are allowed to misunderstand. People are allowed to leave. You are allowed to survive it. That one sentence removes so much fear. You are allowed to survive it. You do not need to prevent every ending. Some endings are the only reason you ever meet the next version of yourself. You know that because you have already lost things you thought would destroy you, and you are still here. That evidence is inside your posture now. Threats feel smaller. The future feels wider. You stop clutching. A man who has survived enough goodbyes becomes careful, but he also becomes free. He realizes no single person is the entire road. No single job, no single room, no single version of life. There is always another morning if you keep moving. That knowledge brings the monster closer to the surface, not because you want to attack the world, because you no longer fear losing pieces of it. And fear was the chain. Fear kept you over-explaining. Fear kept you returning. Fear kept you loyal to situations that had already become disloyal to you. Fear kept you performing goodness for people who only respected strength. Now the chain is thinner. You feel it. You say no faster. You recover faster. You notice sooner. You stop begging. You stop trying to force people to see what they have already chosen not to see. Your dignity gets quieter. That is how you know it is becoming real. Fake confidence is loud. It needs witnesses. Real confidence can leave without a speech. Real confidence does not need the room to agree. Real confidence is willing to look wrong for a while. That is the monster they were afraid of without knowing it. Not a man who wants to dominate. A man who no longer wants to be dominated by his need for approval. That person is free. And free people are unpredictable to systems built around obedience. You used to be easy to predict. Give him responsibility. He will accept. Give him guilt. He will stay. Give him crumbs. He will remember the feast from years ago. Give him one soft night. He will forget 10 hard weeks. Not anymore. Your memory has become loyal to you. You remember the whole pattern. Not just the good moments. Not just the bad. The whole thing. That is balance. And balance makes decisions cleaner. You stop making permanent choices during temporary loneliness. You stop returning because one night feels heavy. You stop abandoning a future because the past knows your name. That is discipline. And discipline is where your power is moving now. Pain started this transformation, but pain cannot finish it. Pain eventually leaves. Then who are you? That is the real test. When nobody is watching, when nobody is doubting you, when the enemy becomes irrelevant, when the old relationship stops hurting, when you no longer need revenge. Do you still build? Do you still train? Do you still protect your mind? Do you still keep your standards when loneliness offers you a shortcut? That is where the monster proves whether it is just anger or something greater. You are becoming something greater, not because you feel powerful every day. Because you move on days you do not. That is the difference. Motivation needs a mood. Discipline needs a decision. You are becoming a man of decisions. Quiet ones. Wake up. Get up. Do the work. Close the app. Save the money. Leave the message. Keep the boundary. Walk away. Start again. Nothing cinematic. That is why they do not notice. Transformation rarely looks dramatic while it is happening. It looks repetitive. Then one day the result walks into the room and everybody calls it sudden. Let them. They did not see the mornings. They did not see the times you almost returned and did not. They did not see the paragraph you deleted, the drink you refused, the purchase you skipped, the workout you finished alone, the plan you stopped announcing, the tears you let happen without turning them into a decision. They see the monster. They do not see the discipline that taught it where to stand. That is important. Do not unleash everything just because you finally understand you have power. Power without judgment becomes another prison. You do not need to show everybody your teeth. You only need to stop pretending you do not have them. That is enough. Walk gently, but know you can leave. Love deeply, but know you can survive loss. Help people, but know where help becomes self-betrayal. Forgive. But remember, stay calm, but do not stay silent when silence costs your dignity. That is the balance. That is the complete version of you. Not soft, not hard. Both, the heart and the gate, the compassion and the standard, the patience and the line, the ability to forgive and the ability to close the door. That is what they never understood. They thought you had two options, weak or cruel, nice or dangerous, patient or powerful. Wrong. You can be good and still be difficult to destroy. You can be kind and still become impossible to use. You can love people and still refuse to disappear for them. You can forgive the past and still refuse to repeat it. That is real power. And now you finally see what was happening all those years. You were not weak. You were practicing restraint without knowing how valuable it was. You were carrying power you had not learned to direct. You were protecting people from consequences they needed to feel. You were protecting yourself from a version of strength you thought would make you bad. Now you know better. The monster was never your cruelty. It was your refusal, your instinct, your boundary, your ability to detach, your capacity to stand alone, your willingness to choose yourself when choosing yourself disappoints everybody who got comfortable with your sacrifice. That is what you were holding back. And now you do not have to unleash it like a storm. You just stop locking it away. Let it stand beside you. Let it remind you. You do not have to answer. You do not have to chase. You do not have to stay. You do not have to explain your worth to people determined to measure it cheaply. You do not have to become smaller to prove you are safe. You are allowed to be powerful and peaceful at the same time. You are allowed to have teeth and never use them unless you must. You are allowed to walk into a room knowing exactly what you can survive. That knowledge will change you. It already is. And the next time somebody calls you weak because you chose restraint, smile. They have no idea what restraint has been protecting them from. You were never weak. You were just holding the monster back. Now you are learning how to let it stand up without letting it become you.